Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Cricket on Forever Sports. And today, Pakistan sealed a whitewash series victory over South Africa with a 95-run win. With South Africa, really back to the drawing board. I mean, just completely outclassed over the entire series. There's no other way to put it. South Africa traveled to Pakistan in what was going to always be a very tough series, and were just completely outclassed by a Pakistan side, which just fired on all cylinders. They had really good batsmen that stood up. They had really good spinners. They had really good seamers. And across the entire squad, there were very big individual moments from a lot of different players. It wasn't a case of just one or two players carrying the entire team. It really was a team effort. And that really was summed up by, the first test where spin was such a big problem for South Africa, then being followed up by the fact that Hassan Ali was the player of the match with a 10 for. So a brilliant performance by Pakistan, exactly what they would have wanted out of the series. But for South Africa, it is really back to the drawing board. Before you take a look at the match itself and the series and review sort of what happened, please do subscribe to the channel, bottom right-hand corner there. Smash like on the video as well. The T20 series starts on Thursday. We will be doing a live watch-along, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. When we reach 1,000 subscribers, we are also giving away a PROTEAS shirt, so make sure you're subscribed so that you can become a part of that. Right, so if you look at the tests, Pakistan batted first. They scored 272. In reply, South Africa scored 201. And that 70-run deficit was pretty much what West South Africa lost in the end, because, chasing 370 to win in the final innings was always going to be virtually impossible, really. It was going to be such a daunting task. And I think if you look at the top five successful run chasers of all time for South Africa, none of them have been in the subcontinent. And if we had chased down this 370, it would have been within the top five best run chasers of all time for a South African test side. So it was always going to be a very difficult chase. And it was always going to be very unlikely that South Africa were to go and chase down. But before we even look at the chase itself, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I think that the test was lost, first of all, in our first innings where South Africa failed. I mean, 201 is not good enough for a first innings total. At the very minimum, South Africa needed to get up to 250, 260 and make sure there was pretty much no deficit before they even got onto the last innings, because batting fourth is always the most tricky time to bat. Secondly, you've got to look at the bowlers in terms of the second innings and how they allowed the tail of Pakistan to continue to add runs to the scorecard. You look at the likes of Mohammad Rizwan coming in and scoring 100, with Fahim Ashraf adding in 29, Yasir Shah adding in 23, and then a brilliant innings by Nouman Ali, 45 runs. That cannot happen. Those 45 runs do not happen, and suddenly South Africa is in for the test. And I think that was a major issue which South Africa needs to be able to address, the ability to get through the tail. Because, you look at Pakistan, and the fact that South Africa had them, 76 for 5. 76 for 5, and then 128 for 6, 143 for 7, and suddenly we're thinking, right, it's all right. But then from 143 for 7, 293 for 9. That cannot happen. That is where the test match was lost for me. The poor first innings, and then a really poor second. Pakistan in the second innings, really good one from them, but a poor effort from South Africa not being able to go through the tail and finish off that innings. And then we look at the reply, and at the end of day's play, and even look at today, South Africa were on track to try and chase this total down. An absolute test masterclass by Aiden Markram, who scored his first century in subcontinent conditions with his 108 of 243 balls. A test match innings. He took his time. He earned the right to play the shots. He really did battle hard. Dean Elgar contributed with just 17, but then Dusty van der Dussen and Aiden Markram laid a platform. And van der Dussen fell, and then Faf du Plessis fell very quickly. And then Taylor Mavuma and Markram, another 50-run partnership where they really put on a really good stand. And suddenly it was looking like South Africa could actually go on to do something special. And Taylor Mavuma ended up on 61. But it was really when the Markram wicket fell that it suddenly went off. From being, 33 for 1, then 127 for 2, and then 135 for 3, the platform that Markram and Bavuma laid meant that we were actually 241 for 4. And at 241 for 4, you think, wow, you've still got Quinton de Kock, you've still got Vian Mulder, you've still got George Lindy. There are batsmen in the shed. Maybe they can do something special. But we then fell. Quinton de Kock just needlessly gave his wicket away. And personally, I would drop him almost virtually on that shot selection alone. It really wasn't good enough. And then Temba Bavuma fell shortly after. George Linde played a beautiful cover drive and then flashed another one, got himself caught at point. Also, not acceptable at this level. Kesha Maharaj, I've never really rated his batting. I think he's got a good eye, and I think he can be quite aggressive. But I just don't think his technique's good enough to warrant even being called a sort of bowling all rounder. And then Kagiso Rabada just completely got castle, and then Vian Mulder with nothing left to go to do came down the pitch and tried to go over the top against Yasir Shah. So eventually, despite being 241 for 4, suddenly South Africa were bowled out for 274. It really isn't good enough to lose 6 wickets for like 30, 40 runs. It was just a massive collapse. And you've got to look at players like Faf du Plessis, the senior batsman. And the fact that I think he didn't come off this tour played a huge part, but then also Quinton de Kock, your two best batsmen, just didn't score any runs. Quinton de Kock, to have gone out in the fashion he did, was unacceptable. Even in the first innings, to come out and try and be that aggressive. He went out eventually for 29 off 20 balls and a strike rate of 145. This is test match cricket. And what we saw in the second innings between Vavuma, Van der Dussen and Markram was test batting. And that's what we need to see more of. Can these players dig deep and take a match long? That's how you can win test matches. And I think if you look at the series as a whole, some big stand-up performances in terms of the South African camp. You've got Markram, who was the series top scorer. He scored 227 runs at an average of 56.75 and a strike rate of 41. And for me, the most positive thing about that is the strike rate. The fact that he was willing to take his time and prove that he is a test opener. Because that is always the issue. That because he's so aggressive, because he likes to be so free-flowing, he often gets into the 30s and then goes out. And then Temba Bavuma scored 162 runs, an average of 54, strike rate of 38. Again, somebody who, and what's ironic is these two batsmen were the ones under the most pressure coming into the series. Aiden Markram having earned a recall, coming off against Sri Lanka, but still sort of having that knack of giving his wicket away early and having a really poor average in subcontinent conditions. He really stood up tall. And Temba Bavuma, I think, also made a very good contribution and sort of justify keeping himself in the setup because he continues to show how, when things are really tough, he can sit there and he can grind it out. And that's what you need. You watch him play and you can see that there's a test match batsman in there. Yes, he needs to score more hundreds. Yes, he probably needs to be a bit more consistent. But at the end of the day, for someone who's always sort of been batting 6 and now sort of batting 5, he's got that grit. And that's why I've always really liked him as a player. Because I think there's a stat where when he comes in as a number 6 and South Africa got less than 150 on the board, I think he averages like something like 70, in those sort of pressure situations. So that's something that he just seems to have. And in terms of the bowling, Kesha Maharaj ended with 10 wickets over the series, an average of 31, second only to Hassan Ali, who took 12 wickets. Anil Tolkia took 9, and then Numan Ali took 8. Yasir Shah took 8. So I think, once again, we reinforced how Maharaj is our best spinner, and I think very underrated as a spinner, to be honest. In the first time he played in Pakistan, would have learned a lot. But I think, you look at some of the batsmen he got, the fact that he seemed to have Baba Azam's number, a really important breakthroughs he made. And I think the bigger disappointment was probably Kagiso Rabada, who managed just 5 and an average of 39. And I think George Linde, took 5 wickets, but that was all so it was all in one inning. So he went 3 innings where he didn't take a single wicket, and then all in one inning. So I think that, I was impressed with what I saw in the second innings, but if he's going to become a test bowler, he needs to be more of a wicket threat. He didn't go for a lot of runs, had a very good economy of 2.48, one of the lowest in the series, but he needs to take more wickets if he is going to be considered part of the side. So the question is, where does South Africa go from here? And what I want to see is, and what I was sort of maybe most upset about in terms of the tour, is that we didn't get to see any youngsters given a chance. We didn't get to see Rana Fontonda. We didn't get to see Kyle Verreynne, and we didn't get to see Keegan Peterson, which, if we were dominating stuff, was fine. But when you're seeing batting collapses and you're seeing players out of nick and not playing particularly well, it's frustrating to just know that we've got players in the wings who've earned the right to get given a chance. And I think if the Australian series had gone ahead, I think there would be big question marks over Quinton de Kock. Yes, he's not going to have the captaincy. And also big question marks over Faf du Plessis. Is it time now to move Faf on and keep him for purely limited overs cricket and bring in a Kyle Verreynne, Keegan Peterson, Rana Fontonda, maybe bring in a specialist number 3, move Vassie van der Dussen to 4, keep Temba Bavuma at 5, maybe even replace him, or bring Kyle Verreynne at 5 and let Quinton de Kock bat at 6. So there are options, and I think that's something we need to look at in the next coming months. And the biggest frustration is we didn't get a chance to see some of these players play. But at the end of the day, it's another series lost. It's really back to the drawing board. I think the coaches also need to have a serious look at themselves. I think you can't, it's a shared game. The players didn't come off, but you've also got to look at why are they not coming off. Are they just not good enough? Is there a coaching issue? The fact that mentality seems to be such a big issue, and the fact that technically the players seem all right, but mentally there's an issue. That can also reflect poorly on coaching staff. So there are so many question marks surrounding the side. And what I think we need to do is sort of draw a line in the sand and say, right, what is our 3-4 year plan? And if Faf du Plessis is going to be around to mentor the youngsters, that's fine. But I also think you got to sit there thinking, who's going to be playing in the side in 5 years' time? How can we start blooding them? How can we bring them into the test side and actually give them test match experience? You look at a side like England, who really struggled in the test arena a couple of years ago, and are now really taking it on to India, which is pretty unheard of. So that's what I think where we need to do. We almost need to kind of, after these 2 series, I think at the moment, unless we can get another series scheduled, our next test is right at the end of the year. So we've got a long 6 months to really plot a course for South African Test cricket. Now, most of the attention will be to the T20 series, despite the fact that most of the Test series will be, Test players and Test squad will be returning down to South Africa. But then, all focus on the T20 series and then the T20 World Cup at the end of the year. So back to drawing board for South Africa, not a series they're going to want to remember. Let me know what you thought of the series down in the comments below. Smash like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel. My name is Steven, and I'll chat to you soon.